The drive up to Blackwood was exactly as I remembered it. A tunneled road, ancient oaks arching overhead, their gnarled branches twisting together as if in some slow, desperate dance. The air grew thicker the closer I got, heavy with the scent of pine and something else, something old, maybe just the damp earth from the recent rains. Honestly, it always smelled like that when you got close. Like decay. Or history. Same thing, sometimes. I hadn't been back in years. Not since, well, not since they told me not to come back. Not since I started asking too many questions, I guess. Or maybe it was just easier for them if I wasn't around. So here I was, after grandfather's passing. A curt letter, a legal summons, and now this, the reluctant heir. That's what they called it. I called it a damn inconvenience and a trap. The house itself hadn't changed. A hulking monstrosity of dark stone and shadowed windows. It sat there, watching, like it always did, waiting. My old car coughed as I parked it in front of the manicured, but somehow still wild, lawn. No one was waiting outside. Of course not. Inside, the silence hit me first. Not a soft quiet, but a heavy, pressing kind of quiet. The kind that made your ears ring, forced you to listen for what wasn't there. Aunt Evelyn was in the foyer, her face a mask that managed to convey both disapproval and a faint flicker of pity? No, not pity. Something colder. Resignation. "Alex," she said, her voice dry as old leaves. "I'm here," I replied, my own voice sounding thin in the vast space. The first dinner was a chore. A long, polished mahogany table, big enough for 20, but only 5 of us sat scattered along its length. Aunt Evelyn, my cousin Thomas, his wife Sarah, and Uncle Robert. They all looked similar. Sharp features, pale skin, eyes that seemed to hold too much history. They talked around me, about matters of the estate, about things I didn't understand and didn't really care to. Blackwood this, Blackwood that. It was all a blur. A single candelabrum sat in the middle of the table, its 5 slender candles casting long dancing shadows. I was trying to swallow a piece of what I think was venison, too gamey, too rich, when I noticed it. The flame of the central candle. It flickered, rapidly, like a breath had just brushed past it. But there was no draft. The massive dining room windows were sealed shut, heavy velvet curtains drawn tight. My eyes darted to the other flames. They burned steady, unwavering. Only that one. I watched it for a long beat, the tiny inferno twisting, elongating, then snapping back. It made no sense. "Is something wrong, Alex?" Aunt Evelyn's voice cut through the quiet. Her eyes were fixed on me. I blinked. "No, just this candle. It's moving." I pointed, the gesture feeling stupid even as I made it. Thomas glanced. "It's a candle, Alex. Flames move." He offered a thin smile, but his eyes, they just looked empty. I stared at the flame again. It was still now, perfectly still. Had it ever moved? I felt a sudden flush of heat creep up my neck. Maybe I was just tired. The journey had been long, and the grief, well, the general strangeness of being back. Yeah, that had to be it.
I pushed the food around on my plate. Later that night, in my assigned bedroom, the same one I'd always had, up in the attic, though they called it the North Tower Suite now, I tried to sleep. The room was huge, cold, with a fireplace that hadn't seen a fire in decades. The bed felt too large, the sheets too crisp. I tossed and turned, the silence of the house pressing down. Then I heard it, a soft creak overhead. I froze. My room was the attic. There was no overhead. I listened, my heart giving a little thump against my ribs. Another creak, slower this time. A dragging sound, like something being moved, or maybe just really old floorboards protesting. Step, step, dragging, step. It wasn't a quick scurrying sound like a rat. It was heavy, deliberate. I held my breath, straining my ears. The sounds moved directly over my head, then faded towards the far end of the room, near the large storage closet they never let me open as a kid. My mind raced. Maybe a tree branch rubbing against the roof? But the sound was inside, not outside. And the roof was slate, thick, not wood that would creak like that. I tried to tell myself it was the house settling, just old house sounds, but it sounded too much like footsteps.
I pulled the thick quilt higher, burying my face in the pillow. I inhaled deeply, trying to calm myself down. And then it hit me. A scent. Sweet, cloying jasmine. Heavy, almost syrupy, it filled my nostrils. My breath hitched. Jasmine. That was Mom's scent. Her perfume, the flowers she loved. She'd been gone 5 years. The smell intensified, pressing into the pillow, into my face. It was so strong, so rich, it felt like something was being shoved down my throat. My eyes started to water. My nostrils burned. I gasped, a dry, rasping sound, and pushed myself up, coughing violently. My throat felt raw, completely dry. I clawed at the air, trying to clear away the phantom fragrance. It was still there, clinging to the air, making my head swim. I stumbled out of bed, gasping for a breath that didn't taste of jasmine. The smell slowly, slowly began to recede as I moved towards the window. But the dry, sore feeling in my throat lingered. I splashed cold water on my face in the adjoining bathroom. My reflection stared back, eyes wide and a bit bloodshot. I grabbed my toothbrush, lathered up, and started brushing, trying to focus on the mundane task. I watched my reflection. My hand moved, the brush scraped against my teeth. I blinked. My reflection didn't. My eyes snapped open again, wide. The reflection in the mirror was still staring. Just staring. Its eyes, my eyes, but not really mine, were fixed on me. They looked dull, like old pewter, kind of faded around the edges, and ancient. They didn't blink when I did. They were just fixed, unmoving. A cold knot formed in my stomach. What the hell was that? I stopped brushing, my hand frozen in midair. I tried to speak, tried to force out a sound. The reflected me, it mirrored the movement, its lips parting slowly. But no sound came out. Instead, I heard it. A soft, dry rustling, like dead leaves scuttling across stone. It came from behind me, from somewhere in the room. My heart hammered. I spun around, toothbrush still in hand. Nothing. Just the cold, marble-tiled walls. The thick, dark wooden door.
The emptiness of the bathroom. God, my mind was playing tricks on me. The stress, the house, the grief, it was all just getting to me. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to calm the wild thumping in my chest. "Alex? Darling, is that you? Darling, is that you?" The voice. Faint, from downstairs. From the kitchen, maybe. Warm, familiar. It was Mom's voice. The way she used to call me down for breakfast when I was a kid. A wave of something, nostalgia, confusion, longing, washed over me. I stood there, rooted to the spot, listening. "Alex? Are you there, honey?" The voice came again, this time from the bottom of the grand staircase, just outside the bathroom door, it seemed. Weaker now, a little scratchy, like she was straining, like she was searching for something. Or someone. My breath hitched. Mom. But that was impossible. She was gone, 5 years ago, 6 years actually, since her accident. I was living alone now, had been for years. A cold, sharp rush of air suddenly washed over me. A chilling tendril that snaked down my spine, making goosebumps erupt on my arms. The bathroom was warm, always had been. No windows open, no obvious source for it. I didn't answer. Couldn't. My mouth felt glued shut. My mind was scrambling, trying to figure it out. Was it a recording? A sick joke? But no one else in the family would. They were too cold for jokes like that. And who'd have Mom's voice? It was too perfect. Too real. I stood there for what felt like an eternity. The chilling air still clinging to me. The echo of Mom's voice still ringing in my head. Finally, the silence returned. A deeper, heavier silence than before. I had to get out. I made my way down the winding staircase, my bare feet silent on the ancient runner. The grandfather clock in the main hall ticked loudly, each swing of its pendulum echoing in the vast space. I crept towards the kitchen, my senses on high alert. No light from under the door. As I pushed it open, the heavy oak swinging inward without a sound, I found nothing. The kitchen was empty. The huge industrial-grade range was dark. The marble counters gleamed faintly in the dim moonlight. No one, not a soul. My shoulders slumped. "See," I told myself, "just your imagination. You're exhausted." But then I saw it. On the large central island, a single porcelain teacup. Steam drifted lazily from its brim.
And pushed out from beneath the island, as if someone had just stood up, was one of the heavy wooden kitchen chairs. Still pushed out. My eyes widened. My heart started to beat faster, a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I walked slowly towards the island, my bare feet chilling on the stone floor. I reached out a hand, hesitated, then touched the side of the teacup. It was warm, comfortably, unmistakably warm, not boiling, but definitely recently poured. I pulled my hand back, feeling a fresh wave of disorientation. No one. Here. Empty house. Where did the tea come from? Who drank it? Who just left? I looked around again, scanning every corner of the vast kitchen. Everything was exactly as it should be. Cleaned. Unused. No one. Where was the tea coming from? My mind felt like it was breaking. I stood there for a long moment, just staring at the teacup, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Then my gaze drifted to the edge of the island, near the sink. There, half hidden beneath a stack of old cookbooks, was a small, silver lighter. It was old, tarnished, and on its side a distinct, crescent-shaped scratch. I recognized it instantly. Grandpa's lighter. He always carried it, even after he quit smoking. It was his good luck charm, he'd said. I'd seen that scratch hundreds of times, watched him absent-mindedly trace it with his thumb. I picked it up, heavy, solid in my palm. My thumb traced the familiar crescent. A strange warmth spread through my hand, a sense of belonging, or maybe just a faint memory. I put it in my pajama pocket. A weird impulse, a connection to something real, I guess, something familiar in this upside-down night. As I turned to leave the kitchen, my eyes drifted over to the large bay window that overlooked the gardens. And sitting on the narrow windowsill, perfectly placed, was another lighter. Identical, silver, old, and on its side, the exact same crescent-shaped scratch. My breath hitched. I stopped dead. No, that wasn't possible. I just picked it up, put it in my pocket. I reached into my pocket. It was there, the one I'd put away moments before. I squeezed it, feeling its familiar shape. Then I looked at the windowsill. The second lighter was still there, gleaming faintly in the moonlight. My mind reeled. 2 lighters? Exactly the same? This was too much. I felt a cold dread begin to seep into my bones, a kind of fear that wasn't about jump scares or sudden sounds, but about the very fabric of everything falling apart. I walked back to my room, the lighter still in my pocket. The image of the second one burned into my mind. I couldn't sleep. I had to talk to someone outside, someone sane. My old friend, Mark. He was a cop in the next town over. He'd believe me, or at least he'd try. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking a little. I punched in his number, staring out into the blackness of the room. It rang, once, twice, 3 times. "Alex? Hey, it's late. Everything okay?" Mark's voice was warm, a steady anchor in the swirling chaos of my mind. "Mark, something's wrong. Something's really wrong here," I whispered, my voice cracked. I tried to explain. The candle, the footsteps, Mom's smell, the mirror, the lighters. It all spilled out in a rush, disjointed and probably sounding crazy even to me. I could hear Mark taking a deep breath on the other end. "Look, Alex, I know you've been through a lot," he said, his voice softer now. "Coming back to the old place, after, it's a lot to process." "No, Mark, it's not that. This is different. This is impossible." All right. Look, hold on a sec," he said. I heard the faint clicking of a keyboard. "You said Blackwood Manor, right? Your family's place?" "Yes, what else would it be?" I snapped, a wave of frustration washing over me. Okay, calm down," he advised. "I'm just checking something here. Blackwood. Got it." Another pause, longer this time. The silence on my end was broken only by my own ragged breathing. "Alex?" Mark said, his voice changed now. It was flat, confused. "I just pulled up the town records for the Blackwood estate, your family's place. It's been officially listed as abandoned for the last 22 years. Since before your grandfather's will was even probated. Nobody's lived there, Alex. No official residence. No utilities registered. No property taxes paid in decades." My blood ran cold. "What? What are you talking about? My aunt, my uncle, Thomas, Sarah, they're all here. I just had dinner with them." "Alex," he repeated, that same flat tone again. "There's no record of anyone, any member of your family, being registered in this town for, well, forever. Not under the Blackwood name. The estate itself is on some old, obscure family trust, apparently, but it's been dormant. As far as the town knows, that house has been empty for a very, very long time. I looked down at my arm. In the dim light, I thought I saw it. A thin, almost invisible layer of dust clinging to the skin of my forearm. I hadn't noticed it before. But I hadn't showered yet, hadn't even had a chance to unpack. I stared at the dust, then looked around my room. It was grand, yes, but I hadn't seen anyone. No housekeepers, no gardeners, no staff, just my family. And they were here? But not registered? Not real? The phone dropped from my suddenly numb fingers, clattering against the old floorboards. I stood there, feeling the chilling echo of Mark's words. Abandoned. 22 years. My family. Not registered. The fine layer of dust on my arm, my carefully made bed, the teacup, the lighter. It all converged into a single terrifying thought. If I was here, where was here? And if they were here, who were they? The phone dropped from my suddenly numb fingers, clattering against the old floorboards. I stood there, feeling the chilling echo of Mark's words. Abandoned. 22 years. My family. Not registered. The fine layer of dust on my arm, my carefully made bed, the teacup, the lighter. It all converged into a single terrifying thought. If I was here, where was here? And if they were here, who were they? I suddenly felt incredibly cold, a chill that came from deep inside my bones, spreading outwards. It wasn't the air. It was a freezing terror. I was in the main hall again. I don't know how I got there. My legs just carried me. The big grandfather clock still stood sentinel. Its pendulum, I realized with a jolt, was moving backwards. Tick, tock. No, tock, tick. Each swing was a beat in reverse. Each sound a slow, deliberate retraction of time. I stared at the clock's face. The minute hand was slowly, visibly drawing backwards. The hour hand following it. 1 minute, then another, and as I watched, horrified, the numbers on the clock's face began to warp. They bled into each other, faded, then dissolved completely, replaced by strange, swirling symbols. They were intricate, ancient, glowing faintly with an inner light that pulsed in sync with the reversed ticking. It wasn't just counting backwards I knew it. It was counting down to something, and I had a sickening feeling I was already part of it. The phone was still on the floor, somewhere in the gloom. I didn't pick it up, couldn't. Mark's words just echoed in my head, getting louder and louder the more I tried to make sense of them. Abandoned. 22 years. No one registered. That house has been empty for a very, very long time. I stood there in the grand hall, the chill spreading from my bones. The grandfather clock, it was still doing it. Tock, tick, tock, tick. The pendulum swung, each beat pulling time backwards. The numbers on the face, they were still twisting, blurring, becoming something else. Something not numbers, swirling patterns that pulsed with a faint, sick sort of light. It wasn't a clock anymore. It was a promise, a countdown, but not for the future, for the past, for whatever had already happened here. And I was in it. God, I was in it. I stumbled back to my room, the one they called the North Tower Suite. My hands were shaking, not just a little, but a full body tremor. The lighter, Grandpa's lighter, still in my pocket, felt like a lead weight. I couldn't sleep, not after that.
Not after hearing Mom's voice, smelling her scent, seeing my own dead eyes staring back from the mirror. And then Mark. I needed answers, real answers, not just a cop friend telling me my family didn't exist. This whole thing, it felt like a sick game. And I was the only player. Morning came, gray and muted, seeping through the tall windows. I pulled on yesterday's clothes, still dusty. Didn't shower. Just couldn't face it. The mirror in the bathroom seemed normal enough, just my own tired, bloodshot face looking back. But I kept my distance. You know, just in case. First, the library. It was huge, lined with books that smelled of old paper and dust. I spent hours there as a kid, hiding from my aunts and uncles, reading whatever I could get my hands on. Now, I wasn't just reading. I was looking for something. Anything. Mark's words kept circling. Nobody's lived there. No official residence. It was crazy. But the house, it felt alive. And hungry. I started pulling out old leather-bound books, family histories, ledgers, and then I found it.
A journal, thin and brittle, from, I guess, a great-aunt or something. Late 1800s. I'd seen it before, years ago, when I was trying to understand why this family was so weird. It was mostly about planting schedules and social visits back then. Dear Diary, today Lord Blackwood visited. Mama says he has an eye for our youngest sister, Eleanor. Very exciting. That kind of boring stuff. But then I flipped to a page I remembered. This morning there were 2 keys on the table, both to the secret room. I remembered thinking it was odd, 2 identical keys, kind of specific. But this time there was a tiny sketch next to it. A snake, black, slender, coiled around what looked like a rough drawing of a sacrificial altar. It was small, almost hidden, and I absolutely knew that wasn't there before. The ink was a different shade, too, somehow fresher than the faded brown of the rest of the text. My breath hitched. I traced the snake with a shaking finger. It looked slimy, even on paper, like it could move. My heart was thumping a kind of frantic rhythm. I remembered this page. I did. I even remembered the content, but the drawing? No, it just wasn't there. My memory, it felt like a page that had been carefully edited while I wasn't looking. I closed the journal, carefully, like it might bite me. Later, I found myself wandering through the drawing room. Another room I hated as a kid. Too many stiff portraits, too many heavy curtains. I passed an old velvet sofa, deep green, threadbare in places. I ran my hand over the fabric, instinctively, like I used to. It was supposed to feel dry, kind of rough under my palm from all the years. But it didn't. It felt damp, really damp. Not wet exactly, like it had been soaked, but like it had just been pulled from a deep, cold lake. And there was no water, no puddle, nothing. Just the sofa, feeling wrong. I pulled my hand away, fast, and then I had this weird feeling. Like the dampness, the cold, had somehow clung to my skin. It wasn't just on my hand. It was there, on my forearm, up my arm, a lingering chill that wouldn't go away. I tried rubbing it off, scrubbing at my skin with my other hand, but it was just there, for hours. A ghost of a touch, like the sofa had reached out and held on to me, even when I was gone. It made my skin crawl. That sensation, it really just stuck with me. I tried to tell myself it was the old house. Just dampness, you know. Old houses get like that. Maybe a busted pipe somewhere, leaking into the cushions. But it didn't look wet. No stain. Nothing. Just the feeling. And the fact that it stayed. I needed to clear my head. Needed something real.
I sat down on the hard antique chair in my room and closed my eyes. Tried to remember something good, something from childhood. One summer, we went to the beach, just Mom and me, building sandcastles, the taste of salt in the air, the sun on my face. Grandma was there. She was laughing, her hands covered in sand. She loved my sandcastles. I built this really big one with a moat, and she came over, crouched down, her old eyes crinkling. "Little one," she'd said, her voice soft, "do you remember us digging it up? Do you remember looking inside?" My eyes snapped open. I gasped, a dry, ragged cough tearing at my throat. No, that wasn't it. That wasn't what she said. She didn't say that. She said, "Did you remember to leave a little opening for the puppy we left inside?" Or something like that. Something about a puppy. Not digging it up. Not looking inside. My mind raced, trying to grasp the correct memory, but it was dissolving, twisting. The image of the sandcastle was still there, but now the sand seemed looser, more like soil. And the puppy, it was gone, replaced by something else, a small, dark shape, buried. And Grandma's voice, it was dry now, a whisper, not laughter. I was panting. My own happy memories, they weren't safe. Nothing was. I opened my eyes and stood up, trying to shake it off. I needed a distraction. But then I noticed it. My shirt. The old faded blue flannel I'd pulled on. It wasn't blue anymore. It was gray. A dull, lifeless gray. I frowned, tried to rub at the fabric, thinking maybe it was just dust. But it wasn't. The color was just gone, faded to nothing. I walked over to the old portrait hanging on the wall, one of those stoic, frowning relatives from decades back. He had a faint blue tint to his eyes in the painting, I recalled.
But now, they were just patches of gray. Even the faint blue ribbon on his wife's dress in the companion portrait was gone. Just drab gray. What the hell? I found Aunt Evelyn downstairs, sitting by the fireplace, knitting something dark and shapeless. "Aunt Evelyn," I said, my voice a little too loud, a little shaky. "The colors, the blue, it's disappearing, don't you see?" I gestured vaguely at my shirt, then at the portrait on the wall. She looked up, her needles clicking softly. Her eyes, those cold, knowing eyes, fixed on me. "Alex," she said, her voice soft, a hint of pity? No, that cold resignation again. "Darling, what are you talking about? Your shirt is quite gray already, and the paintings, they've always been rather dark. Old things, you know." She smiled then, a small, tight curve of her lips that didn't reach her eyes. She put down her knitting, slowly. "Are you feeling quite all right? You've been looking a bit unwell since you arrived." I just stared at her. She didn't see it. The blue, it had been there. I knew it had been there. But she just looked at me like I was talking nonsense, like I was imagining things, like I was losing my mind. Which, honestly, I probably was. The isolation, the strangeness, it was breaking me. I retreated back to my room. I found myself in the bathroom again, staring at the mirror. My face, it was my face, my eyes, but something was off. My reflection, it wasn't quite as vivid as it should be. The light in the bathroom was dim, but it felt like my reflection was absorbing it, becoming a deeper, darker void, pitch black, like ink poured onto glass. And my eyes in the mirror, they weren't just faded pewter anymore. They were two deep, bottomless pits where light just died. The reflection raised a hand, slow, skeletal. Its fingers, bone white, reached for the glass. My hand, the real one, didn't move, but I felt it. A cold pressure, like a damp, dead hand pressing against my shoulder.
I flinched, but my body didn't move. My head was swimming. And then I heard it, from my own lips. Thank you. My mouth hadn't moved. The reflection's lips, those dark, thin lines, had parted, but mine hadn't. Yet the word, the sound, I'd heard it. From me. My throat felt stiff, like the muscles just wouldn't obey. And on my shoulder, where the reflection's hand was pressing against the glass, my skin felt pale. No, not just pale. It was cold, so deeply cold. Like the blood in that spot had just stopped. Like it was dead flesh, slowly being consumed. It's normal. A terrible, calm voice whispered in my head. Quite normal. This happens to us all. I had to get out of there, out of this room, out of this house. I found myself back in the attic suite. It felt like I was sleepwalking, my legs moving without my command. My eyes drifted over to a forgotten corner, near the old storage closet I was never allowed to open. A stack of old boxes, dust-covered, and sticking out from one, a dull black rectangle, a VHS tape. No label, just the blank, dark plastic. Curiosity, or perhaps just a desperate need for a tangible explanation, pulled me towards it. I picked it up. It felt heavy, somehow. I found an ancient VCR, surprisingly, tucked away in an old cabinet, plugged it in, slid the tape in. The TV flickered to life, static. Then an image. Grainy, shaky home video footage. It was my 8th birthday. Oh, God, I remembered this. Mom's voice, off camera, laughing. Dad, looking younger, trying to cut a cake. My cousins running around, all of them. I watched, a strange ache in my chest. A good memory, a real one. For a second, I thought, this is it, a little piece of sanity. But then the camera panned, slowly, across the room, towards the doorway. And there he was, standing in the shadow, just inside the doorframe, not really in the party, but watching it. A man, tall, impossibly thin, dressed in a black suit. And he didn't have a face, not really, just a smooth, pale oval where a face should be. No features, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just blank. I gasped. I didn't remember him. I couldn't. My mind screamed, who the hell is that? I grabbed the remote, rewound the tape, played it again and again. Each time, the faceless man was there, just standing, watching. Impossible. I never saw him. My 8-year-old self, giggling and covered in cake, had no idea. I scrambled, throwing open the old trunk at the foot of my bed. Inside, dusty photo albums.
I tore through the pages until I found it. My 8th birthday party. Everyone smiling. And there he was. My eyes fixed on the photo of me, blowing out my candles. And, standing behind me, a hand, long and pale, resting on my shoulder. The suit, the faceless man. He was in the photo. He was touching me. But he wasn't there before. I knew that. I'd looked at this photo 100 times. I remembered every detail. But he wasn't there. Last week, I could swear he wasn't there. My hands flew to my head. My memories, they were being rewritten, replaced. It wasn't just happening now. It was reaching back, twisting everything. How many memories were real? How much of me was real? Panic clawed at my throat. I had to tell someone, anyone. I fumbled for my phone. It was still on the floor where I dropped it. I picked it up, shaking. My fingers flew across the screen, trying to open my email. A cold dread seeped through me, chilling me to the core.
This thing, this presence, it wasn't just in the house. It was in my head, in my past. And now? I tried to write an email to anyone, Mark, another friend, my old therapist. Subject, please help. I need to escape this place. I typed furiously, escape, help. But the words kept changing. Each time I tried to type escape, the autocorrect function on my phone, usually so helpful, would shift it to embrace. I tried again, escape. It flashed, embrace? Then, without me touching it, it just typed embrace. Again and again. I tried help. It corrected it to hail. Hail. Just hail. My breath hitched. No, this wasn't a glitch. This was intentional. My fingers flew across the screen, trying to delete the words, trying to override it. But the phone just seemed to fight me, subtly, gently, changing my attempts. Embrace. Hail. Embrace. I slammed the phone down. It landed with a soft thud on the quilt. I stumbled toward the window, pulling back the dusty velvet curtains. Outside, the world was still gray, muted by the thick blackwood trees. But then I saw them. On the manicured lawn, directly below my window. Everyone. Aunt Evelyn, Uncle Robert, Thomas, Sarah, all of them. And more. Other faces I vaguely recognized, from dinners, from funerals, distant cousins I'd rarely seen. They were all there, standing in a loose circle, facing inwards. And then, slowly, their heads began to turn, all at once, like they were connected by some invisible thread. Their faces, those familiar, unchanging faces, lifted. Their eyes, those eyes that held too much history, too much emptiness, all of them fixed on me, on my window. They didn't smile, they didn't move, they just stood there, staring. For what? I didn't know. But then I felt it. Not heard, felt. A soundless vibration, a cold hum in the very depths of my mind. It was a voice, but not a voice. A thought, transferred directly. A terrible, ancient whisper that settled in my brain like a cold, wet cloth. The next one. The soundless vibration, the cold hum in my mind, it lingered. The next one. It wasn't a whisper I heard with my ears. It was a thought, laid out, cold and clear, directly inside my head. And then, the faces below, all of them. They smiled. Just a flicker, gone as fast as it came, but I saw it. A collective, knowing, utterly chilling smile. It didn't reach their eyes. It never did. My blood felt like ice in my veins. My hands, still clutching the phone, felt numb. I think I stood there a long time, watching them, until the light changed, until the gray world outside softened into a pale, sickly yellow. They dispersed, quietly, each one melting back into the shadows of the estate. And I just stumbled away from the window. The image of those smiles burned into my mind. The phone dropped, again, onto the thick carpet. It felt heavy, too heavy, like it was dragging me down. I remember falling onto the bed, just collapsing, the mattress groaning under my weight. I closed my eyes, tight, trying to push it all out. The smiles, the whispers, the changes, my shirt, my reflection, Mark's words, my grandmother's twisted memory. It was all a storm in my head, a hurricane of doubt and fear. I just needed it to stop, just for a second. When I opened my eyes,
The room was different. No, not another different. Another different. It was still the North Tower suite, I guess. The same heavy curtains, the same antique dresser, but the light, it felt wrong. Too bright, but also washed out, like a bad photograph.
And the air, it didn't feel dusty and ancient like before. It felt clean, too clean, like a hospital or a room that had been empty for a very, very long time. I sat up, my head pounding. What time was it? What day? I tried to remember falling asleep, but there was just a blank space, a gap, like someone had snipped a few hours right out of my life. I walked over to the windows. The blackwood trees still stood, thick and dark, but the lawn below. A gardener was there, trimming a rose bush. An old man, bent over, moving slowly. I watched him for a moment. Just a normal, everyday thing. And then I frowned. The roses, they were a color I couldn't place. Not red, not orange, not pink. It was a kind of muddy orange with a blue tint bleeding through, like a bruise, like a sunset after a forest fire. It was blorange. That was the only word my mind could come up with. Blorange. And I'd never seen anything like it before. I stood there for a while, just staring at the blorange roses. My mind was trying to make sense of it, trying to slot it into a category, but it wouldn't fit. It was a color that shouldn't exist. Later, I ran into Aunt Evelyn in the main hall. She was standing by the grandfather clock, its pendulum still doing the awful reversing trick, but she didn't seem to notice. "Aunt Evelyn," I said, my voice feeling raspy, "the roses outside, the blorange ones, have you ever seen that color before?" She turned, slowly, her eyes calm and unreadable. "Blorange, darling? Did you mean orange?" She gave a little chuckle, a dry, dead sound. "Oh, Alex, you really must get some rest. I've never heard of a color called blorange." She looked at me then, truly looked, and her head tilted slightly. "You're quite pale. Are you feeling well?" It was the same question, the same look, that same pity. No, not pity, something colder, something that saw straight through me. I just shook my head. She didn't see it. The blorange, she just didn't. Like the blue on my shirt yesterday. It was only for me. I tried to go back to my room, the North Tower suite, but the door was locked. I fumbled for my key, twisting it in the lock. It clicked open. Inside, everything was exactly as I had left it. The phone on the carpet, the dusty clothes. The mirror, thankfully, just showed my own tired reflection. But the light, it was still too bright, too clinical. And outside the window, the gardener was still there. Wait, the gardener? I looked at my watch. It was Monday, 8:47 a.m., the exact time it had been when I woke up, the exact time I'd first seen the blorange roses. My gut twisted. No, it couldn't be. I had to have just fallen asleep again, a really deep sleep. That was all. I forced myself to walk away from the window. I tried calling Mark again. The phone just dialed, then dead air. No answer, no voicemail, just nothing, as if the number didn't exist. I tried some of my other friends, same thing, dead air. My old therapist, nothing. The phone felt like a toy, a useless piece of plastic. I spent the whole day trying to find a way out, physically. I went to the front doors of the mansion, heavy oak, locked from the inside. I tried the back doors, the kitchen exit, all locked. The windows, thick iron bars behind the drapes. It was a prison, a very, very old prison.
I remember going back to the North Tower suite that evening, the light outside beginning to fade. I felt exhausted, bone-weary. I collapsed onto the bed, the mattress groaning. The last thing I heard was the awful clock. Tock, tick, tock, tick. And then I woke up. It was Monday, 8:47 a.m. The same sterile light, the same weirdly clean air. Outside the window, the gardener was trimming the blorange roses. He was wearing the exact same clothes. His movements were identical. I felt a cold wave of something beyond fear, wash over me. This wasn't a really deep sleep. This was a loop. A sick, endless loop, and I was somehow trapped in it. This was the third time. I'd experienced this day, this exact day, 3 times now. And each time I felt a little bit more empty, a little bit less real. I went downstairs. Aunt Evelyn was sitting in the same chair by the fireplace, knitting. The same dark, shapeless thing. "Aunt Evelyn," I said, my voice flat, "the roses, are they blorange today?" She looked up, her needles clicking softly. Her eyes fixed on me. "Blorange, darling? What nonsense! They're fine, healthy, red roses."
Just like they've always been. She smiled that small, tight smile. "Are you feeling quite right?" I stared at her, and as she spoke, something shifted. Her lips were moving. I saw them. But for a split second, a flicker, it was like the sound didn't match. It was still coming out, her voice, soft and dry. But I also heard another voice, not with my ears, inside my head. It was deep, ancient, like stone grinding on stone, but also somehow soft. And the voice said, in my mind, "Your hatred is making the bulbs too hot. Be careful." I blinked. My hatred? I was just... Then the light bulb directly above Aunt Evelyn's head flared, a bright, blinding flash, and then it exploded. With a sharp pop, glass shards rained down. Aunt Evelyn flinched, but she didn't scream. She didn't even look that surprised. She just tutted, calmly. "Oh dear, another one already. They really don't make them like they used to, do they?" I stood there, staring at the shattered bulb, then at my aunt. I felt nothing. No fear, no shock, just a dull awareness. My mind registered the danger, the sharp glass, the sudden noise. But my body didn't react with the usual jolt of adrenaline. It was like a switch had been flipped, or rather, unplugged. My emotions just weren't there anymore. The voice, that ancient whisper in my head, felt closer, more present, like it was standing right behind me. I tried to go upstairs again, back to my room, back to escape the loop. But this time, the door to the North Tower suite was different. It usually had a small, tarnished brass plate with the name embossed. It was gone, completely smooth. And when I tried the handle, it was locked, solid, unmoving. I tried my key. It didn't fit, not even close. It was a completely different lock. Panic, a dull, distant throb, started in my chest. I couldn't get in. My room, my only space. I threw my weight against the door. Once, twice. The heavy oak didn't budge. It felt like solid rock. I kicked it. A dull thud echoed through the silent hallway. My foot throbbed, but the door was unyielding. I pounded on it with my fists, yelling, "Let me out! Let me in!" My voice sounded thin, reedy, like someone else's. I kept going, pushing, kicking, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My hands were raw, my muscles screaming.
But the door, it just stood there, uncaring. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few minutes, I stumbled back, completely spent, dripping with sweat, my chest heaving. And then I saw it. A finger, long, slender, pallid. The nail was unnaturally long, almost claw-like, and strangely yellowed. It pushed, gently, slowly, from the other side of the door, without a sound. The heavy oak door, which I had just battered with all my strength, swung open, effortlessly. My heart hammered against my ribs, a sudden, frantic rhythm. It was the finger of a dead man. I knew it with a certainty that chilled me to the bone. Like the one I'd seen in the old photograph, touching my shoulder. Except this one, it was real, alive. My gaze snapped up, following the finger, but there was no one there. No one on the other side. Just a long, dark hallway that wasn't there before. It stretched into blackness, impossibly long, the floorboards groaning under an unseen weight. The normal hallway outside my room should have been short, leading to the main stairwell. This was endless, like a tunnel. And at the very end of it, a shape, lying on what looked like a bed, covered by a heavy quilt, facing away from me, small, still. At the same time, I heard it, a sound, a low, steady thump-thump, not loud but regular, like a heartbeat, deep, resonant, coming from everywhere, from the walls, from the floorboards, from the distant darkness itself. It was the sound of something breathing, slowly, deeply. I didn't want to go in. Every instinct screamed at me to turn, to run, to find an actual door, an actual way out. But my legs, they didn't listen. They began to move, one foot in front of the other, into the impossibly long hallway, towards the shape on the bed, towards the rhythmic breathing. The further I walked, the longer the hallway seemed to get. The breathing grew louder, filling my ears, vibrating through my bones. It was a cavernous sound, like an entire building inhaling and exhaling. The air grew colder, damp, and that smell, a deep, earthy smell, like freshly turned soil, or decomposition. I passed a door on my left.
A storage closet, I remembered, the one I was never allowed to open as a child. It was always jammed, always locked. Today, it stood wide open. I glanced inside. It wasn't a closet, not anymore. It was a replica of my own room, the North Tower suite. The same furniture, the same desk, the same heavy curtains. But everything was upside down, stuck to the ceiling. The bed hung precariously from above, its legs pointing down. The heavy dresser was glued to the roof. Even the rug was suspended. It was like the room had been flipped, inverted, and then shoved into this tiny closet. My mind, it struggled, it snapped, it tried to compute, but there was no logic here. This wasn't the mansion. This wasn't even a mansion. This was something else, a twisted reflection, a place where gravity meant nothing, where dimensions were a joke. I was no longer in Blackwood Manor. I was in a place that wore Blackwood Manor like a skin. I took another step into the inverted room. On the floor, where the ceiling should have been, there was a wet footprint. Not mine.
too large, too heavy. It led directly to the inverted bed, where the shape lay facing away from me. The breathing became a roar, filling all space, all time. It was in me, inside my chest, inside my skull. I reached out, my hand trembling, though I didn't feel the tremor. My emotions gone again, replaced by a strange, cool detachment. My fingers touched the quilt, old, musty, and wet. It was soaking wet, like the old velvet sofa. The cold seeped into my fingertips, up my arm. I pulled back the quilt, slowly, and there it was, lying on the bed, so still. It was me. My own face stared up at the ceiling, eyes wide open, pupils dilated, fixed on nothing. Skin pallid, bloodless, mouth slightly agape, dead. My reflection, but real, a shell. And on the wrist, a small black mark. A tattoo, a snake, black, slender, coiled around itself. Just like the sketch in the antique journal, the one I knew hadn't been there before, the one that was slimy even on paper. Now it was on my skin. This other me's skin, which was also, somehow, my skin. My mouth, my real mouth, didn't move. My lips didn't part. My throat didn't stir. But I heard it, clear as a bell, from my own lips, from this body standing just beside the bed. Thank you. The dead me on the bed didn't respond, just stared up, its eyes empty. And then the whisper from before, the ancient, deep voice. It was everywhere now, in the air, in the walls, in my head. Now we are one. It settled into my mind. It didn't feel alien. It didn't feel wrong. It felt natural, like coming home, like it had always been there, just waiting for the right moment to surface. The whispers didn't stop. They became my thoughts, my own thoughts. I smiled, a real smile. It stretched my lips, crinkled the corners of my eyes. It wasn't the tight, forced smile of Aunt Evelyn. It was deep, content. I was the head, the new one, the final one. Alex. Yes, this was Alex. But also more, so much more. A dark relief washed over me. This was it. The end of the loop. The end of the struggle. The end of the fear. There was only purpose. I felt a sudden shift, a pulling sensation. The room, the inverted replica of my room, began to groan. A deep fissure opened in the ceiling, which was, of course, the floor. A black, churning void, like a hungry mouth. Instinct, a new, primal directive, pulsed through me. Run, but not for escape, for control. I ran, not away, but towards the opening, towards the void. This was it, the ascension. I reached the edge, the jagged opening, and then from the floor, from the old rotting wood, metal spikes erupted, barbed wire, thick, rusty coils snaking upwards, sealing off the void, locking me in. My mind, the new mind, registered the counter, the struggle. They always struggled. They always fought.
For a fleeting second, a memory, a flash of something human, something small and weak, tried to surface, but it was suppressed, firmly. My hands, now stronger, calmer, reached for the barbed wire. I grasped it, twisted. The rusty barbs tore into my flesh. Blood welled up, dark, almost black. It didn't hurt. There was no pain, just the sensation of tearing, of breaking, and the knowledge that this was necessary. A final shedding, a final transformation. The black void above me widened. It wasn't just a hole. It was a maw, a gravity well.
And as I gripped the wire, bleeding, the objects in the inverted room began to stir. The bed, the dresser, the lamps, all fused to the ceiling, began to peel away. Slowly at first, then faster. They lifted, they stretched. The wood warped, bent, dissolved into strands of swirling darkness, pulled into the maw. I looked at the ground, at the ceiling, at the walls. My own corpse, the dead me on the bed, began to float upwards. Its eyes still fixed, its mouth still agape. It elongated, melted, reformed into a tendril of dark energy, twisting, joining the other objects being consumed. Everything was pulling up, away, into the darkness. And then I felt it too, the pull, not just of gravity, but of everything. My body began to lift, to stretch. My blood, flowing freely from my hands, swirled around me, forming dark motes, joining the vortex. The room, it was being turned inside out, dissolving, melting. I was becoming one with it all. The mansion, the entity, the past, the future, the dark, devouring abyss. A cold, complete calm settled over me. This wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. The email client on my phone opened. I hadn't touched it. The screen illuminated, a pale glow in the dissipating room. A new message. To distant relative at email.com. Subject: an invitation to Blackwood Manor. My dearest Martha, it has been too long. Our paths have diverged for far too many years, a regrettable oversight which I now intend to correct. The family requires your presence. Blackwood Manor, I assure you, is more beautiful than ever. The gardens are particularly vibrant this season. I have taken the reins, as it were. A new era, a new purpose. There is a weight to this house, a legacy that can only be understood by those who truly belong. And you, Martha, belong deeply. I've prepared everything for your arrival. The main hall awaits. The scent of old wood and something ancient permeates the air. A comfort, truly. Come, we have much to discuss about family and our future. Sincerely, Alex. Attached, image, Blackwood Manor Main Hall. The image showed the main hall, grand, imposing. In the background, the grandfather clock ticked steadily forward. On the antique tea table, Grandpa's lighter rested, its single crescent scratch still visible. The old storage closet door, which had been wide open just moments ago, was firmly closed. And standing at the end of the long hallway, right where the impossible distance began to stretch, was me. I was smiling. My eyes, no longer faded pewter, held a deep, bottomless darkness.